At first, I didn't think it was real. I woke up to this blinding light, and I was transported to another place. Pluto TV! Then I heard a voice.
Come with me if you want to live.
There were thousands of movies and shows, and they were all free.
The truth is ours.
It's just so beautiful.
On Pluto TV, free streaming of Terminator 2, Fringe, Arrow, The 100, and The X-Files may cause excitement, loss of sleep, and sudden belief in extraterrestrials. No credit cards or alien encounters necessary. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. A great day when the leader of China, Xi Jinping, has hailed a new era of U.S.-China relations defined by stable ties during talks with President Donald Trump in Beijing today. Their multi-day summit has struck a notably conciliatory tone, that is reported by CNN, with both leaders extending a hand of partnership. As Xi said, they agreed to establish a constructive strategic relationship over the next 3 years and beyond. But Xi also warned that Taiwan is the most important issue in China-U.S. relations, and it could create, quote, a very dangerous situation if mishandled. There's also an op-ed, fairly alarming op-ed, in the New York Times. The headline, China is planning for a final victory over the U.S. And the piece by a China historian from Columbia University, Julian Gewirtz, goes back to a 1938 memorandum, pamphlet really, that was written by Mao Zedong, and basically suggests that in his actual agenda right now, that is the game that Xi Jinping is playing. Meanwhile, the relationship over the next few years with China is going on at the same time that there is an election coming up in the United States that everyone is very conscious of. And today, there was a unanimous move by the U.S. Senate, which was dramatically pushed by the Louisiana Republican, Senator John Kennedy. This is a measure that has taken renewed significance in the wake of 2 history-making shutdowns in recent months. So what is it that could possibly get a 99-0 vote in the U.S. Senate? This is a pretty worthy undertaking, it seems. There were recent shutdowns, a 43-day federal government shutdown in 2025, last year, and a record-breaking 76-day shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security earlier this year. This measure actually bars senators from getting pay of any kind during a government shutdown, if there is, God forbid, another one. The measure does not need approval from the House nor the President, and it is binding for senators beginning in November after the midterm elections. Senators approved the resolution by voice vote, despite some questions as to whether it was constitutional. The Constitution only states that lawmakers are to be paid, doesn't say how much, doesn't say when, with no exceptions mentioned. Meanwhile, The Hill is reporting that President Trump has a wide range of goals for his trip to Beijing, spanning domestic and foreign policy and impacting multiple industries, including manufacturing and technology. But when it comes to immediate impact on the domestic economy and on his own political prospects for the November elections, securing relief for farmers battered by his tariff policies, that's the top of the list. Polls increasingly show, this again from The Hill, show more Americans displeased with Trump's handling of the economy as his own overall approval rating has continued to drop, falling below 40% in the Decision Desk headquarters polling average. That has been correlated with the Iran war and rising gas prices from the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. But even before that, Trump was underwater on tariffs and trade. I wouldn't say that the whole world is going to be perfect out of a good outcome, but I think there can be some definitely incremental wins out of this. So said a Republican strategist named Josh Novotny, and I think he's undoubtedly right. And obviously, Novotny said, the president is always looking for wins, whether it's midterm elections coming up or not. And concerning a further article on the Hill, this is about shutdown optics. The Senate voted, as mentioned, unanimously to advance a resolution to suspend senators' pay during any future government shutdown, potentially giving them an added incentive to prevent future funding gaps. The resolution advanced in a 99-0 vote. It only applies to the upper house, the Senate, not to the House of Representatives, and it doesn't need approval from the House or from the president. If it receives its final approval, it would take effect after the midterms in November. Under the resolution specifically, the senators wouldn't lose their salary during a shutdown, but it would be placed in an escrow account. The money wouldn't be available to them until the shutdown is over. The measure is expected to pass with overwhelming support. Well, partially because since they don't lose their salary, it's just put in an escrow for them. I mean, usually if you're a U.S. senator, you have enough funds so you can pay the bills or use credit or get by knowing that you're going to be paid eventually. Its initiative, tentative approval comes after successive record-long full and partial government shutdowns from last fall and earlier this year. The entire government shut down for 43 days, and the fall over a dispute over health care subsidies, you remember that, while the Department of Homeland Security was shuttered for 76 days over a fight on immigration enforcement. And talking about immigration enforcement, there's more news that is extremely surprising. It has to do with the Border Patrol, and this is not good news by any standard. Mike Banks, who is President Trump's top Border Patrol official, resigned from the position today, effective immediately. What's the story? Mike Banks confirmed his departure in a text to Fox News reporter Bill Malugin. It's just time, Banks told him. I feel like I got the ship back on course from the least secure, disastrous, chaotic border to the most secure border this country has ever seen. Time to pass the reign. 37 years. It's time to enjoy the family and life. Banks' departure from the Border Patrol comes under the cloud of sex tourism allegations against him. Several current and former Border Patrol agents told the Washington Examiner last month that Mike Banks bragged about having sex with prostitutes in countries that included Colombia and Thailand. I don't know how he became chief of the Border Patrol with his character, one former agent told the Examiner, adding that Banks asked him to accompany the agency honcho on one such trip. He's going to third world countries to take advantage of poor women, which disgusts the hell out of me. Another agent told the Washington Examiner, in our line of work, a part of what we do is try to combat the trafficking of females. That's part of our job. It's counter to what we do, what we should be standing for. If you're partaking in these activities, seeing prostitutes in Colombia and Thailand, you're supporting the trafficking and exploitation of women. Good luck in Mike Banks enjoying happier times with his family, and he will undoubtedly find President Trump a new director for the Border Patrol. We will be right back on the Medvedcast.
When you're taking on the tough jobs, gear up with Venom Steel Gloves and defend your hands from grime, grease, and muck. They're 70% thicker than common disposable gloves with heavy-duty 2-layer nitrile protection, including a black outer layer and a white inner layer that provides chemical and rip resistance. Great for all your painting, plumbing, automotive, and DIY projects.
And with President Trump's trip to China, his visit to Beijing, getting a great deal of worldwide attention, one of the things that is striking has been the genial, complementary, positive approach of these two leaders to one another. President Trump loves to say that he has a deep friendship with various leaders around the world. He even said it about the dictator of North Korea when he visited with Kim Jong-un. But saying it about Xi Jinping, at least it's a little bit more reciprocal. And in terms of dealing with other world leaders, you don't hear that kind of geniality between the leaders of Iran and the United States, which is one of the reasons that the war with Iran is not anywhere near a solution or a ceasefire or certainly a long-term peace settlement, though it is obviously on everybody's mind because the war seems to be so stalemated and so destructive to our economy. China can be helpful to our economy. And Trump had a sense of that as he spoke very warmly about his host when he visited the Great Hall of the People. This is President Trump in Beijing, clip 2.
Such respect for China, the job you've done. You're a great leader. I say it to everybody. You're a great leader. I wanted only the top. And they're here today to pay respects to you and to China. It's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be your friend.
Okay, this is somewhat different from the line that President Trump took on China in his presidential campaign, particularly the presidential campaign, his first one back in 2016 when he ran against Hillary Clinton. These are things that he said in 2016 during that campaign that it's unlikely that we'll be hearing today. Clip 1.
Can't continue to allow China to rape our country, and that's what they're doing. China, which has been ripping us off, the greatest abuser in the history of this country, China engages in illegal export, subsidies, prohibited currency manipulation, and rampant theft of intellectual property.
That's not, again, the tone that I think we are likely to hear during this visit to China, where there is such a desperate need to use Chinese influence to try to get Iran to agree to a settlement that could mark the end of this war. Lindsey Graham spoke about how important Xi Jinping is for the United States and for ending the Iran conflict. This is clip 19.
Xi could pick up the phone and end the Russian-Ukraine war. He could pick up the phone and end the Iran conflict if he chose to. Without China buying Iran oil, they would be out of business. The number one purchaser of Russian oil and gas propping up Putin is China. And my message to President Trump is that we have your back. And if China continues to do this, well, without paying a price for disrupting the world, then we'll have made a huge mistake. I've got legislation that will allow President Trump to put tariffs on China for buying Russian oil and gas.
Okay, the idea that Xi can pick up the phone and end not just the war with Iran, our war with Iran, but end the Russian war, the Russian invasion, the desire to take over all of Ukraine. Could Xi really do that? Putin could. But today, news from Associated Press, Russia Thursday today unleashed a third straight day of massive drone and missile attacks on Ukraine, demolishing an apartment building in Kyiv where 9 people were killed and dozens more injured. Authorities have calculated the casualties. More strikes elsewhere in the country wounded more than 24 other civilians. As dawn broke on a clear day in Kyiv, a scene of devastation came into focus in the nation's capital in the leafy Darnitsia neighborhood, located between a suburban forest and the Dnieper River. Wisps of smoke from the collapsed 9-story apartment block where emergency workers dug under concrete slabs and took people away on stretchers. The building's entrance was smashed in the strike, preventing residents from escaping. And all 18 apartments in the building were destroyed. Among the dead was a 12-year-old girl, Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said. 9 people were killed, according to Timur Tkachenko, head of the Kyiv City Military Administration. About 20 were people believed to be missing. Now, all of this seems to obscure or disguise the fact that, according to Rick Wilson, who has written a meditation really about Vladimir Putin and what happens in the world when he is either removed from his position as the sole power in Russia, or if he dies or is killed. We will be talking to Rick Wilson about that speculation, but one of the things that he talks about is that Ukraine has achieved the kind of resilience, the kind of self-defense ability that no one expected. In other words, when you look at the time of this war going on toward 4 years, the idea that they would hold out, the Ukrainians, and even win back some of the land that they had previously lost and control to the Russians, it's an indication, as Rick Wilson meditates, that Ukraine may end up being the big winner of this war as the Putin regime deteriorates. We will get to that. It's a key question. And also get to the idea of people worried about the status of Donald Trump when he gets home from China. We'll get to that and more coming up on the MedVet Show. Love what you're listening to and want more? Well, become a MedEd member for less than $3 a month at michaelmedved.com. We have a huge sale on our daily 3-hour program, 50% off an annual membership. It's a great deal with no commercials and on demand. Go to michaelmedved.com.
Entertain your brain.
Just sit back and enjoy the show.
Every day on The Michael Medved Show.
And on the Michael Medved Show, with President Trump occupying a truly center of attention kind of visit to Beijing, where it makes sense when you have the leaders of the 2 most powerful nations in the world, powerful economically, powerful militarily, powerfully in terms of influence around the world. The United States and China are the two most significant powers. And when you have the two leaders of these countries getting together and speaking warmly and respectfully of one another, yes, it's encouraging. But there's also a great deal of conversation back home about the world that President Trump, at least temporarily, is leaving behind him. And that world included the explosion of some 55, yes, there were 55 of them in one night, overnight and running to the next morning through the entire time when most human beings are sleeping. President Trump was busy sending out 55 different posts on his Truth Social website. And Tom Nichols, who was together with Tim Miller of The Bulwark, talked about those late-night posts, which called for the arrest and imprisonment of President Obama and a number of President Obama's aides who President Trump sees as his enemies, including, of course, very prominently, James Comey, the former head of the FBI. With all of that and that focus of late-night posts on social media, Tom Nichols took this impression of the state of the Trump presidency and the state of the president as an individual in terms of his emotional and mental health. This is clip 14.
Just even putting my Trump derangement syndrome aside, like, in the middle of a hot war, kind of whatever we're calling it, a decrease fire, you wouldn't really want somebody posting paranoid delusions all night long, I wouldn't think.
Well, and the thing is, of course, his supporters always say, well, he knows what he's doing. He's just goofing around and, he's having fun. He puts up tweets about making Venezuela the 51st state, and he knows it's just a joke. And then, of course, someone says, so what was that about? And he goes, no, I mean it. One of the most, it would be funny if it weren't so terrifying. One of the most amusing things about the entire Trump era, Trump says something crazy. His supporters get way out on a limb to say he didn't mean that. That's not what he said. It's a joke. And then the next sound you hear is Trump behind them while they're on that limb going, sawing it off, saying, no, I really meant it. No, I really want to do this. No, I'm not kidding. No, I really believe this. And then boom, they all fall off that limb. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't know if these are paranoid delusions.
Okay, and talking about paranoid delusions, also Representative Jim McGovern of the House of Representatives was walking around the halls of the Capitol and speaking to a reporter about Donald Trump's state of mind. This is clip 17.
Donald Trump's ballroom a national emergency?
You got to be kidding me. It's a vanity project that's going to cost the American taxpayers over $1 billion. At a time when people can't afford their health care, they can't afford their groceries, they can't afford fill up their gas tanks. Donald Trump lives in lifestyles of the rich and famous. And I wish we had some Republicans that would actually stand with us and actually fight for working people.
And what do you make of him calling for Obama's arrest now, 3 presidencies later?
I think he's seriously ill. I think Trump needs medical attention, and there needs to be an intervention. His family or someone in his cabinet. I would say maybe some Republicans here, but they don't have the balls to, confront him on anything. So, but he's not well.
Not well. Somebody else who isn't well is a Democrat who is getting a great deal of attention right now, named Maureen Galindo. She is a sex therapist and housing activist running for Congress as a Democrat in Texas, and warning that the Jewish people in the United States, together with Christian Zionists, are a demonic force. And her main focus in a Texas primary, this Democratic voice, is to try to dissociate the United States from anything having to do with the nation of Israel. James Carville spoke out against loudmouth anti-Israel Democrats people like Maureen Galindo. And James Carville on Jim Acosta's podcast had this to say.
This anti-Semitic stuff is just, it's sickening, man. And it's a real problem.
It's a problem.
It's not a made up problem. It's a real, definitely problem. And it's getting worse in the fact that there are some Democratic aligned people, most of them are not Democrats. All right. That's when they would drive me crazy when they were protesting Joe Biden at Columbia. And or we thought they were saying, hey, ho, genocide Joe must go. And the Democrats were getting blamed for that. A lot of these people are not Democrats. Understand that. Yeah. And they're just, I think people are worried about it. They're sick about it. The ravages of anti-Semitism are all too recent to not pay serious attention to this and not think it's a real problem.
And there's a headline in the New York Times, Democrats can't let this anti-Semitic sex therapist win her runoff. And what the column says is, in a Facebook video from last fall, Maureen Galindo, a sex therapist and housing activist running for Congress as a Democrat in Texas, warned about the Jews working with Christian Zionists trying to bring about the rapture. Speaking of the movie version of the Christian end times thriller Left Behind, she said, quote, all of the Jews who own Hollywood, they use books and movies to create realities. She urged her viewers to turn toward the authentic radical Jesus who was fighting this church of Satan 2,000 years ago, that church that still exists. Online, Galindo combines progressive populism, vaguely New Age therapeutic jargon, and a conspiratorial mindset. She seems like the left-wing version, the wellness influencers who turned to QAnon during the pandemic. In March, she shocked local politicians by finishing first in a four-way Democratic primary in a new congressional district in southeastern San Antonio, seemingly buoyed by the anti-establishment fury motivating Democrats nationwide. This month, she'll face Johnny Garcia, a moderate sheriff's deputy backed by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in a runoff. And in the final weeks of the campaign, Galindo is getting some unexpected help. A shadowy new PAC called Lend Left and Lead Left spent $43,000 on mailers promising that Galindo would dismantle immigration and customs enforcement, create public health care options for all, and have President Trump arrested and impeached. She is running as a Democrat. It's pretty obvious why Republicans, as this group Lead Left is doing, it's a Republican group trying to promote unelectable Democrats. More on that fascinating subplot going on coming up on The Medved Show.
The greatest show on God's green earth.
Epic Fury!
It's the Michael Medved Show.
Is that a great name?
Okay, concerning this ongoing primary struggle, and it's an ongoing primary struggle because they had the first round of the primary, and then it was narrowed down to the top two finishers of 5 different candidates for the Democratic nomination for a congressional seat in Texas. And it turns out that, at least according to a New York Times column, the money behind Maureen Galindo, who is an openly anti-Semitic, and that's her main issue. Her main issue is anti-Israel and anti-Jewish people generally. But she has gotten a bunch of money despite the fact that she's a Ocasio-Cortez style Democrat and she works as a sex therapist. And it's pretty obvious, they write in the Times, that why Republicans would prefer to run against Galindo. Voters in the redrawn district, which is majority Latino, supported Trump by 10 percentage points in 2024, but many of them have since become disillusioned. With the right candidate, Democrats think they could win this seat. With Galindo, a white woman who once inveighed against token-ass puppet sellout Hispanics while complaining online about a bakery, they probably cannot rally behind Galindo. It was jaw-dropping to see how a suspected Republican PAC is now pumping money and meddling in this election. Joe Garcia said he is the opponent and a police officer, former police officer, who is running against Galindo. And Galindo often gestures toward a conspiracy theory common in the Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan, that Nation of Islam, that the people who identify as Jews today are not the Jews of the Bible, but imposters. In response to two questions that were mailed to Galindo, she pointed to Revelation 3:9, quote, "Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which they say are Jews and are not, but do lie." In Congress, she said, if she is elected to Congress, which God forbid, she would write legislation decreeing that any support of Zionism is anti-Semitic, since it is the Zionists who are literally killing the Semites of the Middle East. Jewish Conspiracy Theories writes this column by Michelle Goldberg. Jewish conspiracy theories, anti-Jewish conspiracy theories, deflect popular anger from unjust systems toward supernatural fantasies about demonic cabals. Such conspiracy theories are not just deadly, but deranging. When Galindo claims that the Department of Homeland Security is secretly based in Tel Aviv, she sounds like Alex Jones or Candace Owens, not Zoran Mamdani or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It will come to be a disaster if this energy gets diverted into crankish irrationality. And then Goldberg writes that Owens, that would be Candace Owens, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, seeing that Trumpism has reached a dead end, have lately been calling for an alliance of the populist left and the populist right drawn together by anti-Semitism. Galindo would fit in nicely to such a coalition. And speaking of unlikely coalitions, there's a very lengthy article that is actually, it would be chilling if it weren't so ludicrous and sickening at the same time. The headline is, "Can They Build America First Without Nick Fuentes?" And the deadline is in an oak-paneled library on the ground floor of a mansion outside Columbus, Ohio. A curious experiment in political organizing was underway. Some 50 far-right conservatives, along with a handful of leftist activists, had gathered in this Italian-style villa to hash out an alliance built around opposition to Israel. To kick things off, a 26-year-old progressive Democratic candidate named Jose Vega acknowledged the first of their many challenges that would beset the event. "I heard the live stream got hacked," said Mr. Vega, who is running an insurgent campaign against a pro-Israel New York congressman and a great guy named Richie Torres. The gathering on May 2nd was an effort to expand a movement most closely associated with Nick Fuentes, a white supremacist and white nationalist influencer and an outspoken anti-Semite. The event in Ohio skewed young and male. It was sparsely attended, and many of the 50 or so guests were dressed in their Sunday best suits and loafers. This style was accessorized with America First hats, cross necklaces, and a few diamond-studded earrings. One attendee in his early 20s carried a copy of Pat Buchanan's 2001 book, The Death of the West. The concept of America First, as espoused by Mr. Fuentes as his nightly streams, is centered on closed borders, isolationism, Christian principles, that's in quotes, and opposition to Israeli influence. As a real-world political movement, well, it hasn't coalesced into an effective force. This lack of hard power was one reason a trio of activists, among them a Fuentes acolyte named Amy Dangerfield, who's 26, and her husband, Daniel DeBrant-Cat, had organized the event they called America First United. And they go on with this, and they talk about how the left and right are trying to come together. They write and report that another Republican candidate, Dennis Feitosa, who is running for Congress in California, suggested that politicians who were recipients of gifts from foreign countries be punished as traitors and put to death. And again, that aimed at the paranoid and groundless charge that the people who support Israel here in the United States are motivated by money from abroad. This is also related to some of the controversy surrounding Plattner, who is Graham Plattner, who is the likely Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate in Maine, who is still apologizing for the Nazi tattoo, the Totenkopf, the death's head tattoo from the Nazi SS that he had on his chest until he became a candidate and now has tried to erase it. But it is difficult. And it is one of those things that people are dealing with. There's even a Republican candidate who is attacked for being Jewish. He's not. His name is Mike Lawler. And there is a new anti-Semitic tirade aimed at him because he is a mainstream Republican. That is coming up on the Medved Show. We'll bring you up to date on that issue and more about Marco Rubio talking about Cuba, which no is not likely to become the 51st state, nor is Venezuela likely to become the 51st state, nor is Israel likely at all to become the 51st state. But what about the new passion for eating biblically? And what about that new movie, The Story of Everything, about the creation of the world, worth considering in this greatest nation on God's green earth?